Welcome students, you have just entered a two-part series on how to calculate scatter plots on your calculator, calculate the line of least squares regression on your calculator, plot it over top of the scatter plot, and calculate the correlation. That is part one. Part two, we're going to be finding the residuals, make a residual plot, and be calculating the standard deviation of the residuals. But that is part two. For part one today, we're just going to do scatter plot and calculate the least squares regression line and plot it over top, and then calculate the correlation. Okay, I have chosen a problem from the book. It's called Beavers and Beetles, and only because it was kind of interesting. And the researchers believe that these beetles like to live and reproduce in the stumps that beavers cut down. Apparently the wood is softer than regular wood, so they like to go into these stumps. And the researchers believe that the more stumps should produce more larvae. Here's your data set over here. This is the problem number 70. It's on page 196. Yes, 196 in the book. And there's your data set. And what I'm trying to do is just decide if it follows a linear pattern. I also made a scatter plot by hand. I did not use the calculator for this. I just looked at the table in the book and graphed these points and made a scatter plot. Stumps on the explanatory variable and larvae on the response, because the more stumps would make more larvae. The cause is the stumps, the larvae is the effect. Okay, first thing we're going to do is make a scatter plot on the graphing calculator. So I'm going to go to Stat and List. And if you notice, I already typed the values into L1 and L2 because I didn't want to waste your time with that. But we need to graph a scatter plot with this. So I'm going to go where the plots are. Do you see in this blue spot it says stat plot? That's where all of your plots are, and you're going to hit second y equals to go to the stat plots. We want this first one, so we're going to hit enter. We're going to hit enter again to turn it on. And then if you notice, this one is selected. This is the scatter plot already. It selected L1 and L2, which is perfect, and I want it to be these big boxes so I can see it better. I'm going to hit zoom 9, and there it is. So let's compare it to my paper. Yep, looks pretty good. This is a great way to check two things. It's a great way to check to make sure that your scatter plot is great on the paper, and it's also a great way to check that you typed the right numbers into L1 and L2. Okay. So now we have our scatter plot, and what I need to do now is find the least squares regression line and graph it over the top. And I'm assuming it's going to look something like this, just from the way the scatter plot looks. To find the least squares regression line, I am going to go to Stat, over to Calc, and then down to Linear Regression. This is what we're doing in this chapter, is linear regression, and I'm going to hit Enter. I want it to do L1 and L2. I'm just going to hit enter until it goes down to calculate. And there it gives me the values of the coefficients and R squared and R values. Okay, this is the slope, 11.89, and I wrote 11.8938 on my paper. And the y-intercept is negative 1.29. R squared we haven't learned yet, but you'll learn on Monday or Tuesday. And R is the correlation. This is very important, and you need to write this down on your paper. This is 0.91, 0.92 is what I rounded it to. And if you have a correlation of 0.92, that is a very good indication that your data is linear. So I'm going to come over here. This is how I wrote it. Y hat equals negative 1.29, that's the y-intercept, plus 11.8938x, there's the slope, and it's a positive slope, that looks about right. And R squared is 0.84, that's important for later, and the correlation is 0.92. Okay, so now what we're going to do is go back over to our regular y equals, and we're going to type in that line that we just wrote down, negative 1.29 plus 11.8938x. And then I'm going to graph, and my line should go right through. Now this is great information for your calculator, but how do you get this line over here onto this paper? Well, what you do is you go to the table. The table is located above the graph here, and you go second table. And what we want to do is get the same values as our x. Now notice our x is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And mine is all the way up at 70. I don't want it to be at 70, although it's going by 5s. So I guess I can scroll down. Okay, my table is going by 5s, so I'm going to have to change that. I'm going to go to table set. I'm going to start at 1, that's where I want to start at, and I want to go by 1s. And then I'm going to go back to the table. And there we go. Okay. So I'm going to graph these points right on top of my scatter plot, but I'm going to do it in blue pen so that it looks different. I'm going to graph 1, 10.6 as best as I can. 1, 10.6 is about here. 2, 22.5. 2, 22.5. 3, 34.3. 4, 46.2. 5, 58. And there's my line. And so now I'm going to take the straight edge, and you guys are going to have to do this yourself because I'm holding my phone. So, and make the line out of those, and you'll have the line straight over top. Hold on 1 second, and I'll do it for you. Hold on to this beautiful image of my graphing calculator. Woo! There it is. Okay, there's my line over top. So I have created a scatter plot. I have found the least squares regression plot of line. I've plotted it on the same axes. I found r squared, and I found r, the correlation of 0.92. And this looks pretty darn linear, and it looks pretty darn good. Okay, tune in for the next one where we are going to take this one step further, calculate residuals and the residual plot, and calculate S, which is the standard deviation of the residuals. Excitement. See you then.